Alright guys, just thought I'd do a little bit of an update out at the park today. Just about to go for a bit of a walk. Loads of people out doing step aerobics and fitness stuff. So obviously, some people burn off the COVID, fatness. Whether people have been stuck in the house for months. It's good to see people out and about. And I've got to admit, I've sort of lost complete faith in the information we're getting from the government because there's so much dithering. But also, when you start really analysing the figures, you've got to understand that I analyse figures all day long. Is what I do work-wise. Is actually to do the assessment of costs on buildings and work out the costs of all the elements in a building for what gets replaced, when, and how much it's going to cost. So when I start looking at stats and they start talking about, oh, the cases are up, but we're now down to nearly almost 0 deaths a day. It's good to have 0 deaths, but at the same time, I'm going, hang on, the figures are going up on these cases, but we're actually in a better position than we have been since the beginning. So what am I missing here? Because, of course, if you test more people, you're going to get more cases. That's how it works. But also, I know Spain's figures, I think it was 54% of the people that they did test had 0 symptoms, which also means a lot of people out there that haven't been tested that didn't get tested because guess what? They had 0 symptoms. So I can't trust any information. I know some people are worried about it, especially if you're over, I don't know, 60. I could understand it, or you've got other health conditions. I fully understand it, but from my perspective, it's major disruption where I'm not really too fussed on it, to be honest, at this stage. I can understand all the other problems other people have had, but it's just a massive disruption for me. It may sound a little bit selfish, but the majority of people aren't really being affected beyond the lockdown, losing their business, losing their house, losing their jobs. So yeah, I'll leave that there. So I'm going to spin it onto the positive stuff. Myself, still going through the mortgage stuff at the moment. I've had a couple of requests for my tax stuff for last year. It's a little bit frustrating because they've already got it. I sent them my P60 and things, but they're a bit confused on where I pay tax. And I've said, look, I requested it from the Spanish government. I requested it from the UK government. UK government is you pay tax where the company is. With the Spanish government, you pay tax. What? No. The UK government, you pay tax where you are. And the Spanish government, you pay tax where the company is, which is obviously where they get confused. Well, I've just got, you know what? I got deduction at source. You sort it out between yourselves because due to the double taxation rule, you can't tax me on both. You've already had the deductions. Who's got it in their pockets? Up to you completely. So I've sort of left that with them. Waiting for the bank to come back. I assume they're trying to work out if I'm a resident or not. Now, I've got to admit, it doesn't make any difference because the bank's trying to take all the tax on the property at the initial purchase. Now, from things I've read, if you're a resident of Spain, you can actually, I think, do it over the next 6 months. Maybe somebody else can fill that information in for me because I haven't read anything lately. But I mean, previously, it was if you're a resident, you don't have to do it up front. You can spread it over several months. But this is like typical banks because the same as when I argued over the rate of the mortgage level, they dropped it. Same with the insurance. It's like after 12 months, you can get rid of our insurance and go elsewhere because you can get it for about a third of the price. Yeah, it's all these sort of little things that the banks play at in Spain, which in the UK, I think there's a code of ethics. I don't think Spain has the same setup. Maybe somebody can give me more information on that because I'm not familiar with the Spanish banking system. But there is a lot of extra charges and stuff in there, and where we find the UK, they're more corporate led in shares. In Spain, it does seem to have a few families that control a lot of the banking, which is a very similar aspect to what you get when you're out in the Philippines. Because certain families control certain things, they do what they like because they have the power to do it. So anyway, someone else can fill that bit in for me because they may know more than me. What's the next thing? Oh, somebody was asking me, why don't I tell the truth about the Philippines? This channel is about the truth about the Philippines from my experience and my opinions and my traveling around, people I've met. If you've had completely different experiences, guess what? You've had a different life. In the same way, I can generate money online and have done, where some people need to work in a bar. I don't need to work in a bar. I can make money online. So from that aspect, your life may be completely different. Problems with taxation. Well, I spend a bit of time researching what is actually required to actually submit your tax returns and all this sort of stuff, where other people don't bother, or they pay a hestor, or as I call them, jester, because a lot of the time you're paying a fortune for nothing. The point being is that's up to the individual. Now, depending how much commitment you've got to it, in the sense of if you did your own homework, due diligence, and worked out how to do it yourself, the same as the UK, you may not need somebody doing it for you. It's like an accountant in the UK. Unless that accountant's saving you money on your accounts, then quite simply, you probably don't need them if you've got a small business, if you sat and worked out what you need to submit and what you can get away with. But if they're actually saving you, costing you 600 and they save you 1,200 quid a year, guess what? They're worth investing in. It's worth having that account. And that's what an accountant's supposed to be doing. But what I found in Spain, a lot of hesters basically do the most simple stuff that you can do yourself, yet when it gets complicated, they're not interested. They're quite happily doing the pension paperwork, where a pensioner wants to retire in Spain, got the NIE, very simple process. They'll do that, but when it comes to more complex ones, where EU not plus non-EU or non-EU, or there's some variables in there like working your income's overseas and stuff, a lot of people don't want to touch it. They like it simple, lazy, rather than finding it a bit more interesting to actually do something that isn't day to day. But hey ho, welcome to Spain. But I will also point out it's the same everywhere. People trying to get into the UK because they're mixed marriages, or the EU, living in the UK. I get a lot of emails around it. I am not interested in UK law, really not. The immigration side, I trust the UK immigration less than the ones in Spain, less than the Philippines, because quite simply, I've dealt with the Spanish ones, and I've dealt with the ones in Spain, and I've dealt with the ones in the Philippines, and I've had some dealings with the ones in the UK. The most reasonable and flexible, I would say, is the Philippines, then the Spanish, and the British I've always found completely, sometimes not knowing what they're supposed to be doing. You have to take the documents and argue with them, and then when you start showing the documents, they suddenly go, yeah, because it seems that they're not up to date on regulations and stuff. But anyway, I'm not getting on the negative side. The point being is, do your homework. Whatever it is, if you want somebody else to do it, that's fine. This is what I'm saying. It's different perspectives. If you want somebody else to do it, that's fine. Get them to do it. That's up to you. But if you want to do it yourself, do it yourself. The information's there. None of this stuff is really hard. The whole point is, you just need to spend time understanding what you need to submit, when you're going to submit it, who you're going to submit it, what appointments you've got to book, what order they've got to be into. If you've got an appointment for an NIE in 3 months, then what else can you do while you're doing that, like doing your Padron, all this sort of stuff. What order they're in. Because if you can do that, and you're fairly well organised, you can do it on your own. It isn't difficult. And also, I found the Spanish systems a bit more lenient, and time-wise, they don't seem as rushed. Where the UK, it's like, oh, it's expired, but you didn't send me the letter till Friday, and my appointment was on Tuesday. Didn't give me enough time to get everything prepared that you wanted. Could requests on extra information. Anyway, let's move on from that. So yeah, the mortgage is sort of, I'd say 70% there. I mean, financially, we've got the money, we've got the house. The people want to sell us the house. Not too fussed if we fail on the first attempt, because they want this 1 year of paperwork of being in employment with a company, which actually will be October. Because come October the 1st, I've had 12 months employment. And that's what I told the bank. I said, by the time you sort the paperwork out, it's going to be October. And I seem to be heading in the correct direction, in the sense of it's nearly the end of August. And they're still asking more questions, and we're almost there. It's a bit like asking for a credit report from the UK. I said, but I don't live in the UK. I've been in Spain for 5 years. And prior to that, I was in the Philippines. So Experian, there is no information, because I didn't work in the UK. I worked in Asia, and I worked in the Middle East. So there is nothing to find, because nothing exists. Because it would have to be, the last time there was an Experian report was probably 12 years ago. So that's an interesting one. So I'm just waiting for the bank's direction on what they want from that. Because, I mean, bear in mind, I've been with the bank 5 years. So they've basically had my financials, because they hold my bank account. They can see the money coming in and where it's come from. Because sometimes it comes from America, sometimes from Asia, sometimes from the UK. But they have that information. But anyway, another day. Yeah, it's a bit of frustration this month, because about the property I'm moving from, because it's had a bit of a rent hike coming up from next month. So, well, from next month. So I've got to pay this month's rent for September, coming on the 2nd. So it was quite funny in the sense of, I said, well, because what it was is they moved the wall, so they put the ensuite inside the room. Because previously it was just a shared bathroom, but I'm not there most of the time. So I wasn't really fussed, and I'm not really fussed. What I'm fussed about is finding that my rent's jumped by over 30%. So I'll just say, look, to be honest, I didn't ask for the ensuite, I'll just move. And he's like, oh, you won't get a place this good in the area, I've got a property in the same street for the same rent I was paying originally. So I'm just going to move down the road. I mean, literally the room is the same size. If anything, the new house is in better condition. It's had a new bathroom, new kitchen, bedroom's got fitted wardrobes. So yeah, so it's disrupted me flying home, because obviously this quarantine means that the end of the month, because obviously the school year starts, I look after a lot of schools. I've got to be here when the schools start, simply because making sure there's no problems from the construction work that's been ongoing through the summer holidays. So I was then looking to fly back to Spain, but then I'm only going to go for 2 weeks anyway. No point going shorter. But then I've got 2 weeks quarantine coming back, which means by the time I do all this, guess what? I'd be moving one house to the other, and I'd be stuck in quarantine. So I'm now stuck in the UK for another month, but making the best of it. I've been doing the fitness stuff on a daily basis, which is starting to pay off. Yeah, I mean, it's been good. I brought my camera gear as well. So I'm just starting to think about where to start doing photography at the weekends, getting out and about. So I'm keeping positive and occupied. The delay on the bank, like I said before, a delay on the mortgage is another £1,000 off the mortgage. So I'm not too fussed on that. Or the other option is keep the mortgage and it's money ready for the renovations. Either way, not too fussed, we can wait. We've also renewed the rental on the property we're in for another 12 months. But bearing in mind the way the contracts work in the UK, as long as you give a month's notice, there's a bit of flexibility in there anyway. The other bit of flexibility being in that is that we'll find them a new tenant before we leave. So there'll be somebody going in as we're going out, and we'll probably end up looking after that property along with the other ones. So that's progressing. Like I say, I'm not too fussed. the market's on a nosedive. I mean, I just seen a property this morning. It's come down from over 300,000 to 215,000. There's 100,000 off its asking price, and now they do play price charades quite often, the real estate agents, because the market's all over the place, and if you go in there and offer them a low value, you may find they'll buy into it anyway, because guess what, you make an offer and say, well, that's on the table, don't take it, do take it, up to you, and then look at other properties. You may find that they might actually come back and say, you know what, we'll take that offer because we don't know what the market's doing right now. Now the repercussions, you know, some people are asking, well, what's the repercussions of the current market state in the UK? Because it's obviously going to have a ripple effect in the Spanish economy, because a lot of pensioners may be putting their moving across off for say a year or 6 months while things settle down again. So I do expect that we'll see some drops in house values and stuff continuing. The UK market is also 6 months behind the 6 months behind the effects of the current COVID. What do I mean? Well, you've got people lost their jobs. You've got landlords, which are 90% of landlords only own one house. So they've just extended the evictions period, so it takes a minimum of 6 months now to try and keep people in their houses till the market starts recovering. Now, I assume people ain't going to be paying their rents and stuff because they're not working, which means the owners of the properties are then going to be hit with the fact that people aren't paying their rents. So they've got the knock-on effect of government decision making. Now, you may know more than me on that, in the sense there may be some emergency payments there by the government, but it's probably just going to be a mortgage-free period or something, so the debt's still owed anyway. So they don't give anything away for free anyway. So that could have a ripple effect on the housing market, because if that goes into free fall, you're going to get a lot of people going into temporary accommodation. You're going to get a lot of evictions, a lot of property owners going bankrupt, on top of the rest of the housing market, which is already, I mean, I find the price of inflated in the UK anyway, but you're going to have a lot of people out of work now that may be heading into the receivership level of business collapse. Well, I say business, I was just thinking about businesses as well, but properties going into mortgage arrears and starting to feel the pain of mortgages going down the toilet, because quite simply they can't get any work. Government can't make its mind up whether people should be back in work or preparing for another lockdown. It's a real mess. So these repercussions, I think we should be realistically thinking January. The reason for that being is fluffiness is going on at the moment, where people are going, oh, well, you know, should we go into a lockdown? Should we not go into a lockdown? Oh, there's some protection for tenants. They're not talking about the realities of what's actually going on. People being financially wiped out, people losing their jobs, the economy shrinking, which will have repercussions for at least probably 2 to 3 years, but the initial effects will be felt in 6 months' time. The reason being is, like I said, all this delaying stuff just puts it off until the inevitable happens, which is where suddenly the reality kicks in and everything sort of shrinks in one hit. But then, because the market then drops, the UK businesses become more viable internationally, because the cost of labour reduces due to the inflation of other markets. It's economics. Let's just say that they should have more exports and whatever as the market has shrinkage, because that's a positive effect of recessions. It's why the Chinese market artificially messes around with its values to keep its market viable above everybody else, in the sense of cheaper labour. So you're competing against a false market with the Chinese, because they do alter things to suit themselves, but they are struggling as well, because if the whole world is in shrinkage, nobody's buying. So yeah, it's interesting times. On the positive side though, the sun's out, gonna go for a walk, gonna enjoy the day. But all I can say is you just got to focus on what you've got, not what you had, or what you'll have, but what you've got currently. So for me, it's like yesterday, went out, had a look at a Volvo, because I'm thinking of buying another Volvo. I had one before. Found the build quality really good. I think they're getting a Volvo estate. So get a fairly new one so I can use it and get rid of this BMW. Now I can put it through on the expenses, etc. And then eventually, when I wrap up in the UK, I'll just take it to Spain and change the plates over. Always found Volvo quality really, really good. And I want an estate for the family use. So yeah, it's all good. I can't grumble. Like I said, I mean, a lot of people are in a lot worse situations. So what have I got to moan at? My kids are happy, my wife's happy. They get the beach every day. They get to wake up in a nice place, very low crime, and generally happy. Not sure what's happening with the schools. I think the Spanish schools are going back. The schools have sent some packs out with the information on what's expected, what people have to provide, all this sort of stuff. Very well organised. Not sure how the UK side is in comparison. Although I deal with the schools, I try to avoid dealing with people that work in the schools. I'm not, because mine's on the construction side, I'm not interested in what the heads or bursars or anybody are up to with their day-to-day stuff, because I haven't got kids here. So not wanting to get involved in it, because then they start roping you in for, can you help us get more sanitizer? Can you help us get that? No thank you. I'll avoid that one like the plague. Yeah, so on the positive note, things are progressing, just very, very slowly, but I think the world over is that at the minute. Can I give some negatives and positives about Spain? The negatives is very bureaucratic, but if you know the world over, it is bureaucratic. The world is. What people forget is the bureaucracy is often around when you're born. Because when you're born, the bureaucracy is done by your parents. They go and get your birth certificate's then authorised and all this sort of bit. That puts you into the system. When you move to a new country, that hasn't occurred, which is why you suddenly find bureaucracy. So if you can get past that piece and just recognise that it's because you're not born there, you can basically sort things out quite easily. So bureaucracy, it's the same the world over, so I can't see that being more negative than anywhere else. A positive, sunshine most of the time. Negative, people complain about localised corruption and whatever. Positive, negative, yeah, localised corruption. My own experience in that, a lot of it is around who you know, but I'm used to that from the Philippines. If you know people in politics, the police, or whatever, life's easy. I mean, I've had it in the UK as well, though. I mean, we had a couple of people that were, I'm not sure what they did, because I think they were one of these part-time police or something, because they used to work with us. So it's like I got caught speeding the one day, here's a prime example, and then they recognised it was me, so they just waved us on. This is years ago, by the way. Because the point is, I work with them, so they just waved us on. So it's the same the world over on that as well. It's just that a lot of the time, it's all peacock feathers and false front in the UK. They don't like to admit it does go on, but you do find, if you do investigations yourself, you'll see there's enough corruption issues there to keep you occupied. It's just that it's often not in your face as much as other countries. In the Philippines, where you get the, have you got something for me, when you get stopped for speeding or whatever, in in the UK, it was a case of, oh bloody hell, I worked with that guy. Just waved us on, and then had a word with us when I got to work the following day, and it says, oh, we're there every Tuesday. In Spain, not had any issues. I know some people have had issues with them, with the Guardia and whatever, but my biggest thing with the Guardia, I suppose, is if you speak Spanish, you don't really seem to have any problems. I mean, maybe other people can tell me where they've had issues, but I've found when I speak, when you're speaking some Spanish, it seems to take the grr out of people, because they do get frustrated with tourists. I've got to admit that. But I could understand that if I worked in Benidorm as a cleaner. That must be a bloody nightmare job. So yeah, from that point of view, I can understand it. I'm sure it goes on with other people as well. I'm sure if you're a Brazilian or whatever and having problems around London, for example, when you get stop checked for doing nothing, that's the other side of it. So yeah, I'd say that's just the world over as well. I don't see it any worse than anywhere else. So positive. It's easy to get along with people. I find Spanish people can be easier going. Now, don't get me on to the people from Madrid, because I'll let other people talk about that. I didn't really see the issue until you start getting some of the attitude out of some people. But you get that everywhere as well. It's to do with where people are in the pecking order of society. You will always get it. The Brits have the drunken louts that come from certain parts of the UK, the same as Spanish have it with certain people from certain parts of their society. But I do find when you are engaged with, like, for example, the people that we rent the apartment from, one's a lawyer and one's a biochemist, they're very polite people. So, and I find generally at that level, if they're a business professional, generally I haven't had any issues with anybody. But even the ones that are a bit mouthy or whatever, you're just like, okay, whatever. There's no point getting in an argument with those types of people, because that's the way they are. So I do understand some of the frustrations, but like I said, even the people I know in Madrid, personally, as friends and whatever, are sound. But I do understand what people talk about when you're dealing with some of the holidaymakers on the coast. They can be quite aggressive, especially in the first 24 hours, trying to squeeze some money back on properties that they've rented through Airbnb, etc. So yeah, because they know they've got the first 24 hours to get some refund money, so they're looking around for whatever they can find. But it seems that it's a bit of a cat and mouse game, so I just accept that as part and parcel of the game. So what else have we got? Yeah, so property wise, housing market, I do find the real estate agents a bit dodgy, but that's real estate agents, and don't take it personally. It's part of the game, the same way as any salesperson. They're trying to sell you something. So I don't expect you to be my best friend or whatever. You're going to try and get as much money out of my pocket as possible, the same way a market vendor would, because if he can sell 5 things to me, he's gonna try. That's the whole point. It's all part of the game. So I just go in there with my eyes open and just take things with a pinch of salt. Try not to commit to anything there and then, and come back and find the place is still for sale 2 years later. But yeah, so that's same the world over. Our Spanish races, which is something that come up as well. It's funny, like I said, it depends where people sit in society, because everybody does it. What's funny with social media today is it's got a lot more people's opinions, but often people won't actually say the truth anymore, because they're waking up to the fact that people report them to work, going, your employee such and such said he didn't like somebody because they are, this sort of stuff. But I generally find a lot of people do it in some form. So I don't really see that as an issue. It's a bit like trying to get promoted in a company where you want to become, I don't know, like me. I manage a fairly large budget and have done for years. I mean, the budget I'm on at the moment is much smaller than I have had previously, but it's still in the millions. Yet in Spain, I'd probably end up as a bloody PA, because there is some issues around people giving you the right opportunities simply because you're not Spanish. Do I take that as a problem? Not really, because I experience the same in the UK. In the UK, it's nepotism. A lot of people play golf together. A lot of people have brought people in that they work with in previous companies. A lot of it is around the relationships and not the actual ability or competencies. Now, you'll hardly get anybody admit it goes on, but I got in a bit of bother with Quillian about it, because I highlighted the fact that we had a young graduate come in that was the son of a previous CEO, and I just simply said, well, nepotism goes on in here. And he said, well, what? No, it doesn't. I said, well, he's here because his dad used to work here, and you've given him a role where he'll just drop into a nice role at the top, because he's here as a village idiot at the minute, but over the next 2 years he'll come out as an ops manager, then head straight up into an ops director because daddy's position. So my manager come from Heathrow, his boss come from Heathrow, so who hired who? And then some of the engineers I work with come from Heathrow. They were all friends. I says, so the point being is, the opportunities ain't there. For me, I've accepted a while back that for me to become a director in some of these companies, although I work at director level in many positions, getting to a director level, I would have to have a hold on somebody to be pushed up the ladder anymore. Because quite simply, they don't want you there. That's nepotism. Not because there's a general dislike to me, but they'd rather give it to somebody they play golf with on a Saturday. But you just recognise it and move past it, because that's life. So for me, I don't think there's that much negative about Spain. If you're thinking you fly out there and you're going to suddenly get a bar job full time and all this sort of stuff, you're going to struggle. A lot of it is seasonal. But on top of that, they do want you to speak Spanish. A lot of them want you to speak Spanish in Dutch or some other language, simply because they have a lot of customers coming from around Europe. But also this COVID thing's had a bit of a kick in the teeth for many people. But like I've said before, I recommend finding work online and developing that, because you can do it in your spare time, you can do it in the evenings, you can work it around your daily life in the UK or wherever you're coming from, and get to a point where you can go to Spain and not rely on the local economy. Because I think the average wage in the Torrevieja area is probably €1,000. Yet many people earn above that because their pay slips are fake. There's also the issue around pensions, because pensions then skew the numbers, because the average pension is probably less than €1,000 a month, which means that the figures are then skewed if they're in the same band. Because bear in mind, a pensioner doesn't need a car, a pensioner doesn't need to be going to work every day, so they haven't got fuel costs, they haven't got the daily usage. Not saying most people haven't got cars, etc. I'm just saying that the cost of living is cheaper, hence they can live on their pensions. So there's a lot of things you got to take into account. Personally, I think the best money to be made is online. Secondly, finding places cheap to rent. They're everywhere, but long-term rentals can take you 2-3 months to find a decent one, because of the rights of tenants in Spain that do put people off renting long-term because of the rights to buy and difficulties they have getting people out. So yeah, it's on a positive. If you're a tenant, once you're in, it's pretty secure. If you're not a tenant, you're an owner, it can be a bit concerning if you've got the wrong tenants in, which is why they're a bit picky. This is why also a lot of people try to evict at month 11. Firstly, it's normally the real estate agent, to be fair, that I've found. It hasn't been the owners, because when I've had the conversations with owners on the behalf of some people renting, the owners are completely unaware of it. Because obviously what's happening with the real estate agent is they're after that month's rent again by getting a new tenant in there. So they're going, oh well, this person's left because it's up for renewal. Because if it's the same person in there, they're not getting any more money, which is to do with the way they've set it up. We do it on a monthly basis, so the point is we look after making sure the bills get paid, we make sure the buildings, the place is looked after, we engage with the tenants regularly, and engage with the owners as and when, which is why we've got some properties the owners don't get in touch for maybe lucky of once a year because they're happy with the service we provide. But ultimately, you have to make your own mind up. For me, I love Spain. Well, I'm going to end up there full time again once I've got the house and that sorted, because to be fair, that shows a level of commitment. Buying a property in the town that we've lived in, we've been there over 5 years now, shows our level of commitment to Spain. My kids are there, my kids love it there, my kids are loving the learning, the whole school environment and where we live. You know, I love the ability to take my kids fishing. I love the ability that next will be the snorkeling and scuba diving, because we're right on the water. Yeah, but ultimately you need to make your decisions on where you want to be. That's life. Thanks for watching.